Morgen allerseits. Ich hoffe, Sie sind nicht zu müde nach der schönen Party gestern Abend. Ich glaube, die hat allen sehr, sehr gut gefallen. Es waren ja nicht alle da, aber es war doch gut gefüllt und hat unendlich viel Spaß gemacht. Ich denke mal, ein paar Minuten können wir vielleicht noch warten, aber wir sollten dann schon bald anfangen, dass wir nicht in Verzug kommen. Eine traurige Mitteilung habe ich zu machen heute Morgen. Das ist, dass der Professor Barkowski, einer unserer Hauptredner, ziemlich schwer erkrankt ist und hat ganz kurzfristig abgesagt. Das ist natürlich sehr, sehr schade, aber passieren eben immer solche Dinge, dass der ein oder andere dann noch wegen irgendwelchen Gründen halt nicht kommen kann. Aber ich denke, wir können die Zeit ausfüllen. Ja, unser erster Referent ist Dr. Halasa aus Maryland in den USA. Wir kennen uns schon seit einer Reihe von Jahren. Ich habe ihn zum ersten Mal here. We met first.
Yeah, I think we met at 2001 in Medica. And at that time,
but first time I visited you
in the clinic in Dover was 2012.
Ja.
Yeah.
2012 haben wir uns dann wiedergesehen und er arbeitete damals in einer großen Praxis und ja, ich konnte dann das erste Lasergerät dort auch etablieren. Also in Dover, nicht Dover in England, sondern Dover in den USA. Und ja, es hat ihm sehr, sehr gut gefallen. Besonders, I think the blue light was immediately interesting for you.
Right. Because of the nitric oxide and release of the nitric oxide from hemoglobin and publishing it.
Wir haben das ja gestern schon mal angesprochen mit dem NO, was ja außerordentlich komplexe Wirkungen im Körper entfaltet. Wir werden dann auch mehr darüber hören. Und er hat also auch eine Gesellschaft, eine Firma gegründet und auch eine Wissenschaftsgesellschaft über Nitromedicine, der also etliche Leute bereits angehören. Studiert hat er zunächst in Tripoli in Libyen und hat aber auch in Amerika das Staatsexamen dann dort auch nochmal gemacht und hat sich, wie gesagt, sehr viel in der Forschung auch betätigt im Bereich der Immuntherapie und speziell eben auch mit dem blauen Licht und dem Stickstoffmonoxid. Er ist an vielen internationalen Gesellschaften beteiligt und auch an vielen Zeitschriften und besonders interessieren ihn Stammzellen, Anti-Aging-Medizin und Photobiology. Er wird heute referieren über das Thema Nitromedicine with Antioxidants, Laser Therapy, PRP and Stem Cells in Regenerative Medicine. I think he's one of the best ones in this field, and I'm always happy to get his advice. We spoke together about cancer therapy, and he was the one who gave me advice to use liposomal indocyanine green the first time. This was a small revolution in cancer therapy because we could make it here in Germany, and now it's our main photosensitizer. I'm very, very thankful for that. You know this, no? And he has already several new things in his head. We spoke yesterday about it. It was combining what?
Well, we are planning to combine all those three things, polyphenols, low-dose chemotherapy, and ICG in one drug, nano-delivered technology. I think we have all the technologies and all the ingredients are FDA approved, except polyphenols as a supplement, but I think all the ingredients are FDA approved, and we're going to put it together under personalized medicine. Hopefully we can work on this product.
That's something what we speak later about, it, the combination in cancer therapy using maybe curcumin, for example.
Right.
Then low-dose chemo, what also can be stimulated and not suppress the immune system.
Exactly.
And additionally, ICG, and make this as a targeted nanoparticle. I think this can improve the results a lot in cancer. We will work on this field, and maybe next year we have first data about it. Okay, thank you very much, and please, your lecture.
Yeah. My name is Dr. Halasa. Good morning. I'm the founder and author of Nitromedicine, and I think these are my team of doctors. Dr. Norm Shelley, he's organizing the first international holistic medicine. So after I'm leaving from here, I'll be heading to his conference and speaking there. He's a retired neurosurgeon. I think he's the first surgeon who placed a spinal cord stimulator in the back. And then we have Dr. Burt. He is a pain management doctor, former president of Florida Academy of Pain Medicine. He invited me to present in Florida. That's going to be happening after Kansas. I'll be traveling to Florida, presenting the Florida Academy of Pain Medicine with them. Dr. Hamblin, he is the father of the photomedicine in the United States. And I think we have Dr. Guanata here too. She's the mother of photomedicine, one of the founders. We have Dr. Weber. I think he is the leading of photomedicine, photodynamic therapy in Europe. For photodynamic therapy, I consider him leading the whole world right now because of his up-to-date frontier of using infrared photodynamic therapy. I think he's the only one who's doing it clinically. We have Dr. Garish. She's an integrative medicine doctor, and she's a pioneer in functional medicine. And what we developed here is a new specialty. It's called Nitromedicine. And what is nitromedicine? It's a new medical specialty that focuses on managing chronic disease by restoring the nitroredox balance. And the chronic disease that we are talking about, I think all of this chronic disease that affect the heart, the skin, like psoriasis, skin aging, dermatitis, chronic diseases, nephritis, joints, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, lung, asthma, and COPD. I think all those chronic disease affecting all those organs, they are sharing a common thing, which is an increase in the pathological free radicals and decrease in bioavailability of nitric oxide. So that's a common thing that they share with all those conditions, and that's why we call those conditions, those chronic conditions, whether it is degenerative or autoimmune or chronic infectious disease, as oxidative stress related disease. And the way that we manage those diseases and slow the progression of those diseases and monitor the therapy of those diseases is by restoring the nitroredox balance. And if we do that, we can definitely resolve a couple of those diseases, especially for RSD. We can even resolve it completely by restoring the nitroredox balance. As you see here, how we diagnose the right nitroredox balance, we diagnose it by detecting the oxidative stress markers in the blood and in the urine, or we can diagnose it by doing telomerase testing, or we can diagnose the imbalance of nitroredox by testing the autonomic nervous system. And why autonomic nervous system? Because autonomic nervous system are very sensitive to high free radicals, and they get imbalanced. They get high sympathetic, low parasympathetic, and high free radicals. And we can use it to diagnose the nitroredox balance. We can also use endothelial function test, because endothelium that lines the blood vessels, they're very sensitive to the high pathological free radicals, and they get dysfunction. And so we can test endothelial function as a diagnostic test to monitor and diagnose oxidative stress-related diseases. Okay, so we diagnose it, we're able to monitor the efficacy of the treatment. So what will be the treatment for oxidative stress-related disease? The treatment will be all those nitroredox modulators, whether it's biological or chemical or energy or psychotherapy nitroredox modulators. And biological nitroredox modulators, we use stem cells, plasma-rich platelets, probiotics, and as we know that stem cells and platelets are very rich with nitroredox chemicals, modulators such as thiols, nitric oxide, growth factors, cytokines, and redox enzymes. We also can modulate the nitroredox and treat and manage chronic oxidative stress-related disease using chemical way, which is thiols, nitric oxide donors, polyphenols, ozone, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, 6 hormone, antioxidants, enzymes, cytokines, vitamins, and detoxification. We can also restore the nitroredox modulators, or we can restore the nitroredox balance by using the energy nitroredox modulators, which are phototherapy, electrotherapy, electromagnetic therapy, cryotherapy, sonotherapy, exercise, acupuncture, physical therapy, and low-calorie intake. We can also restore the nitroredox balance using psychotherapy, and that is cognitive therapy, holistic therapy, yoga, and spiritual therapy. All of those therapies, they really restore the nitroredox balance. That's the ultimate mechanism of actions of all those therapies. And so, as we know, these new fields that we are coming up, and I think they are leading the medicine, integrative, holistic, acupuncture, functional, regenerative, physical therapy. The ultimate mechanism of action of all those therapies is restoring nitroredox balance. So let's go ahead and talk about one of those chronic diseases that affect the nerve, which is the Parkinson's disease, and we can use it as an example. And we're going to manage this disease based on nitromedicine approach. And what is Parkinson's disease? It's a chronic, debilitating neurodegenerative movement disorder characterized by progressive degeneration of the dopaminergic neurons in the substantia nigra region in the human midbrain. Oxidative stress plays an important role in the degeneration of dopaminergic neurons in the Parkinson's disease, disruption in the physiological maintenance of the redox potential in the neurons, induced apoptotic genes, and cell death. Up to date, oxidative stress is a well accepted concept in the etiology and progression of Parkinson's disease. A number of sources and mechanisms for generation of reactive oxygen species are recognized, including metabolism of dopamine itself, mitochondrial dysfunction, toxin, neuroinflammatory cells, and aging. In addition to Parkinson's disease causing gene products, including DG1, PANK, Parkin, alpha-synuclein, and LRRK2, which causes mitochondrial dysfunction, leading to exacerbation of reactive oxygen species generation and susceptibility to oxidative stress. Therefore, the therapeutic protocol are targeted against suppressing and elevating the oxidative stress-induced cellular damage and increase the dopamine bioavailability. And I think this shows all the mechanism and the pathology of Parkinson's disease. I'm going to break it down and make it simple and easy. But we know that Parkinson's disease symptoms manifest in the patient after up to degenerations of up to 50 to 70% of dopaminergic neurons. And then we will start having the symptoms, or the patient start having the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. After degeneration of up to 50 to 70% of dopaminergic neurons. And then what will happen, the remaining of those dopaminergic cells are trying to produce and overproduce dopamine to replenish the deficiency, but of course it's not enough to control the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And we know that the dopamine works as inhibitory signals for indirect motor pathway. And what is indirect motor pathway? When we're trying to flex the forearm, for example, at the elbow, what we will do, the brain will send motor signals through direct and indirect pathway, right? And the direct pathway goes to the biceps muscle, stimulate the biceps to contract. At the same time, there will be signals, which is indirect pathway goes to triceps. And of course, we need to inhibit the indirect pathway in order to allow the direct pathway causing the contraction, the smooth muscles of the biceps and the flexion of the forearm. So if we don't have that inhibitory signals enough of the indirect pathway, what would happen is that you get the contraction of both the biceps and triceps, so you end up with that freezing, slow, tremorous Parkinson's disease movement, right? And so how we can treat those, of course, we recommend giving L-DOPA. That's what the mainstream doctors are doing, and I think we need to do it. In order to give those neurons the precursors to convert this L-DOPA to dopamine and get that inhibitory signals of enough for the indirect pathway to produce that smooth movement or restore that smooth movement again. The fact is that giving L-DOPA itself, it can intoxicate the dopaminergic neuron. So it's good for short-term relief of the symptoms, but giving L-DOPA will turn to dopamine, and then dopamine will catabolize into oxidizing dopamine. Oxidizing dopamine is toxins, and it will accelerate further the degeneration of those remaining dopaminergic neurons. And so for short term it's good, but for long term, we find out based on animals and lab studies that it accelerates the degeneration of the dopaminergic neurons and the progression of disease. What are the causes of Parkinson's disease? What causes Parkinson's disease is most of the time we call idiopathic. Almost 95% is idiopathic. Few of them is caused by toxins or combination of both. And the idiopathic is genetic mutations or errors. Some of those genetic errors and mutations are identified, which is synuclein and the PARC and the PANC, DJ1. Those are the genetics that's being identified, and they can be inherited as well. And let's start with synuclein. And if we have abnormal synuclein, what will happen? If we are producing or overproducing too much of synuclein and they are wild and mutant, they will aggregate and they will form synuclein protofibrils. And synuclein protofibrils are very toxic. They are free radical generators, and they generate free radicals inside the dopaminergic neurons. Those free radicals will disrupt the homeostasis of the redox potential, which leads to induction of apoptosis, cell death, and degeneration. The other thing about the protofibrils synuclein, it actually it involves in inhibition of dopaminergic vesicle exocytosis, recycling, and storage. Because normal synuclein protein, it's a cytoplasmic protein, the normal one, it involves in exocytosis of the dopaminergic vesicle. It also involved in recycling it and storage and compartmentalization. So when you have abnormal synuclein, you have a normal aggregation of the synuclein. Those abnormal aggregation of synuclein, we call them the protofibrils. They stick on the surface of the synaptic vesicles of the dopaminergic, and they inhibit the exocytosis, which causes toxic accumulation of the dopamine vesicle in the terminals of the dopaminergic neurons. And at the same time, those synuclein aggregates, they attach to the surface of the vesicle, and they cause pores and penetration on holes into the vesicle, which leads to the leakage of the dopamine outside in the cytoplasm. And when they leak in the cytoplasm, they become toxic. The reason they become toxic because they get auto-oxidized and they become oxidized dopamine, and oxidized dopamine is a free radical generator which will produce free radicals. That free radicals will disrupt the redox potential normal homeostasis and lead to apoptosis and degeneration, cell death. The oxidized dopamine can also recyclize and become aminochrome, and then aminochrome adapt with proteins and lipid, including synuclein, and they become what we call the neuromelanin, which is another deposit that is toxic inside those dopaminergic neurons, and that stimulate the generation of the free radicals. And when the cells dies, they release those aggregates of synuclein and neuromelanin outside, where they will be picked up by the microglia. And microglia, they get irritated after they engulf those waste. And those microglia, they get activated, and they start secreting pro-inflammatory cytokines, free radicals, reactive oxygen species, reactive nitrogen species, which cause inhibition of the surrounding dopaminergic neurons and destruction and induce the apoptosis in those cells and cause cell degenerations. In addition to that, the reactive nitrogen species that they secrete, it actually inhibits the dopamine synthesis by blocking the enzyme is called tyrosine hydroxylase. So it's a vicious circle of generating free radicals and cell death, and you can see the scenario speeding with each other. Synuclein also aggregate. They inhibit the proteasomes, and those proteasomes are very important to degrade those proteins. They are like the trash can for the dopaminergic neurons. That's the way they can recycle those unwanted proteins. So synuclein goes there and block it. And so if you block that trash can, that proteasomes, then you will end up with further accumulation of those waste, which is the neuromelanin and the synuclein protofibrillars, and cause more toxicity inside the cells. In addition to that, synuclein aggregate attacks the mitochondria, and they inhibit the mitochondria. They inhibit complex 1. And when you inhibit the complex 1, it causes mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondrial dysfunction causes leakage of free radicals, pathological free radicals, the bad rows, right? I think there's somebody here talk about the bad rows and the good rows. This is the bad rows. And then this free radicals that generated from the mitochondria will again stimulate apoptosis and the cell death. In addition to that, the free radicals that's being released from the mitochondria can also open the calcium channels in the endoplasmic reticulum. It's called L-type calcium channels, which leads to leakage of the calcium from the endoplasmic reticulum into the cytosol, into the mitochondria, and this calcium can be toxic to the mitochondria itself, causing further dysfunction in the mitochondria. Mitochondrial dysfunction leaks the free radicals, and the free radicals leaks the calcium, and you end up with that vicious circle of releasing of calcium in the free radicals, and both of them, along with synuclein, they can cause induction of apoptosis and cell death. Not just that, but it actually, synuclein can cause mitochondrial membrane permeability transition and leads to release of the cytochrome oxidase. And cytochrome oxidase is a strong signal for the apoptotic genes and causing cell death and degeneration. So if you see all these scenarios, they are feedbacking vicious circle that leads to generation of free radicals and death to those dopaminergic neurons. Another thing about synuclein, they work like prion-like proteins, the prion proteins, that they end up distributing to the neighborhood dopaminergic neurons, and those neighborhood dopaminergic neurons, they pick them up, and then the synuclein inside those dopaminergic neurons will trigger the aggregation of the synuclein, so you end up with protofibrillars of synuclein inside the neighbors of those dopaminergic neurons, which eventually leads to their death and apoptosis and degeneration. The other thing in the mechanism of generation of the free radicals and triggering the apoptosis and cell death is iron. Also, the free radicals that's being released from the mitochondria can cause release of the iron from the heme and from cytochrome oxidase. And these irons are actually free radical generators, those free irons. And they can convert the hydrogen peroxide and the superoxide ions into a very powerful superoxide radicals, and that will also trigger the apoptosis and the cell death. And so in managing Parkinson's disease, I don't think it's enough to just give L-DOPA. We need to work also in blocking the calcium using calcium channel blockers. We can also work with iron, and we can give some iron chelation therapy, like this ferroxamine, or we can use curcumin as iron chelation. Calcium blockers, we can use resveratrol, which is grape seed extract, will help to block the calcium channels. And so it's not just dopamine. We need to look at all the mechanism of action of the degeneration of the dopaminergic neurons and try to block it and decrease the release of this pathological free radicals. And so I think the monotherapy approach of managing dopamine failed in slowing the progression of the disease, and I think we need to use multi-therapy, including giving L-DOPA, because according to some studies, it's called the ELL-DOPA study, they say if you give dopamine in the early of the course or late of the course, does not really affect, that's the result, does not affect the progression of the disease. And the reason why, because yes, if you give the L-DOPA, the L-DOPA becomes dopamine, dopamine is toxic, and yes, it will turn into oxidized dopamine and speed up the degeneration of the nerve, but also, if you don't give L-DOPA, what will happen is that those remaining dopaminergic neurons, they will be stressed to produce dopamine, and when they stress, they need to produce the dopamine out of tyrosine. And making dopamine out of tyrosine hydroxylase releases free radicals. So either way, if you give dopamine, you're still accelerating the free radical, the progression of the disease, and if you don't, it accelerates the progression of the disease as well, because making dopamine out of tyrosine, it generates free radicals, and then also it is a metabolic active process, and that will lead to stressing the mitochondria. Stressing the mitochondria leads to leakage of more free radicals from the mitochondria. So if you see here, the sources of free radicals are inside the cells, are many sources here, right? And so when we manage it, we need to manage all those sources, including the mitochondria. And the best way to manage mitochondria is phototherapy. That's the best thing. And also polyphenols will help too in managing mitochondria. But also you still need to give calcium channel blockers, iron, L-DOPA. What about monoamine oxidase inhibitors? Yes, that's good, because when the microglia, they get activated, the monoamine oxidase in B inside those microglia, they are the one who will degrade the dopamine to oxidized dopamine. So if we block the monoamine oxidase, we can increase the bioavailability of dopamine, at the same time inhibit the generation of free radicals, because monoamine oxidase, when they oxidize dopamine, they generate free radicals. And I think we have a drug there, which is FDA approved, big pharma product, which is called the Silagilin. That drug will be used for blocking the monoamine oxidase. And it does have antioxidant property there, because you are also decreasing the free radical generation here. So it has an antioxidant, plus it helps to increase the dopamine bioavailability. But does it have impact on the progression of disease as it's an antioxidant? No. According to the DataTope study, it didn't show much of slowing of the progression of disease, and because some studies, they say Silagilin can cause mitochondrial dysfunction and toxicity. So, you know, all those big pharma products do have side effects, and there, most of the time, the side effects is abnormal alteration of the nitroredox balance. And again, the monotherapy antioxidant will not be as much as effective here. We need to work on multi-therapy antioxidants, and we need to screen all kinds of free radical generators and neutralize it, whether it is local or systemic. And we can do that by giving antioxidants, polyphenols and thiols and nitric oxide, by calorie intake restriction, helps to stimulate the expression of antioxidant genes, by photobiomodulations for the mitochondria. Yes, you can continue giving Silagilin, pramipexole, which is dopamine dopamine agonist with antioxidant effect as well. It's good, but again, by itself, it does not show any improvement in the progression of Parkinson's disease. Why? Because it is still monotherapy antioxidants, you're not really covering all the leakage of the free radicals. And let me give you an example of the free radical management here. It's better to be done in a multi-therapy and screening all the free radicals and then manage them, right? It's not just enough to just manage one side of it. And I think good example that, you know, when you have a tire, flat tire, right, and you have 5 or 10 holes, right? So if you fix one hole, right, it will not fix the tire. You need to fix them all, right? So I have one time I have my tire flat, and I took it to the car shop, and what happened is that I can see that he's spraying it with the liquid soap to find all the leakage of the air, and then he starts patching it, all of them. We need to do the same thing when we are managing oxidative stress. We need to find all the leakage of the free radicals and then patch them, right? Whether this leakage is coming from mitochondria, whether this leakage is coming from leaky gut syndrome. Have you heard about leaky gut syndrome? People, they have a abnormal microbiome and they end up leaking free radicals. That needs to be managed as well, because there's studies that show people with leaky gut syndrome, their Parkinson's disease is aggravated, and managing it does help to resolve or slow the progression of Parkinson's disease. So we need to screen all the free radical generators, and we need to see if those free radical generators could be from allergy, and we can test the allergies and desensitize the patients, or we can do nutrition genetics for folic acid, because what would happen if you have abnormal folic acid metabolism? You have increased the level of the homocysteine, and homocysteine is free radical generators, and it does aggravate the Parkinson's disease. So yes, genetic testing for tetrahydrofolate reductase, abnormality there, we need to screen it, and we need to give the patients extra folic acid. We need to work on the gut microbiome and treat it with probiotics, right? That's the integrative approach. We need to screen for toxins and detoxify the body, because those toxins can be source of free radicals. We need to also restore the balance of the 6 hormones. Why? Because if you have low 6 hormone, what will happen? It will imbalance the nitroredox balance, and it goes increasing the free radicals. So giving bioidentical hormone is another way of doing it. Vitamin D deficiency. Yes, vitamin D stimulates the epigenetics of antioxidants. So if you have deficiency, you need to fix that. It helps to restore the nitroredox balance. And if you have thyroid problem, it needs to be fixed, because thyroid causes mitochondrial dysfunction, right? And needs to be fixed, and we can, if it's high, we need to manage it. If it's low, you give them what? Thyroid, right? And so, also, we need to know whether we are on the right track or not. You know, just giving all this therapies, and I can see in a lot of doctors of integrative medicine, they're giving all these therapies, but how they know that they are really restoring the nitroredox balance? And we can do that with using ANS, autonomic nervous system, right? Because imbalance in the ANS is a reflection of imbalance in the nitroredox. Why? Because autonomic nervous systems are very sensitive to the free radicals. When it's high, it's causing sympathetic overactivities, and it goes the test very clear. So normal, I think we have somebody has a test of ANS. And so when you give the therapy of those antioxidants, multi-therapy, I think the best way to really monitor the efficacy, knowing that you are balancing the nitroredox, is to test the autonomic nervous system. Endothelium that lines the blood vessels are very sensitive to the free radicals, so you can use endothelial function test to monitor the efficacy of your treatment. And also oxidative stress markers. In the urine, we have oxidized guanosine, we have hydroxynonal, we can use oxidized LDL, right? You hear about oxidized LDL versus LDL, that now today, high LDL is not the factor that causes atherosclerosis. What causes atherosclerosis is oxidized LDL. And so if it's high, it indicates that there is high redox potential in the blood, or high free radicals, pathological free radicals in the blood. I think we call them the bad roses, right? Is that what yesterday, the roses with 2 faces? Okay, so we can also give thiols, IV glutathiones. I have a doctor, his name is Dr. David Perlman. I met him at A4M, and I want to invite him to join Nitromedicine, and he did very good in treating Parkinson's disease with IV glutathione. But again, this approach is monotherapy antioxidant. It has a temporary effect, maybe 1 day, 2 days, but then the patient will start shaking again. So the only way that we can definitely help to slow the progression of Parkinson's disease is to screen all the free radical generators, right, and manage them accordingly. And that requires all these therapies. You have to do it in order to really effectively manage Parkinson's disease, including giving L-DOPA. You know, you still have to give L-DOPA, but once you start giving all this antioxidants approach or nitroredox modulators, then I think you can slow the progression of the Parkinson's disease. But that needs a study, a case control trial, you know, in order to verify the proposed therapy. But this is based on the biochemistry and the mechanism of action. And so we know that we can diagnose Parkinson's disease clinically, right? And what is the symptoms of Parkinson's disease? Tremor, rigidity, akinesia, bradykinesia, and postural instability. Management, the mainstay treatment of Parkinson's disease is psilocybin, pramipixole, levodopa, carbidopa to increase the dopamine bioavailability of the substantia nigra and restore the nitroredox balance and neutralize the free radical generators to slow the progression of the adrenergic neuron degeneration and increase at the same time the dopamine bioavailability at the substantia nigra. Let's go ahead and watch this video. Let's watch this video here. I don't know if we can. Is there any way we can do this video here? Let me see here. It's not coming up, right? Is there internet here or no? No internet? It would be good if we can watch this video here. Do we have the technical people here? Okay. No technical? All right. So, in addition to, as we see that when we're giving L-DOPA can be also toxic to the body because they can be source of the free radical generators. And giving L-DOPA with antioxidant will be more effective in slowing the progression of the disease and increase the bioavailability of dopamine. That can be applied the same thing with giving nitroglycerin or nitric oxide. When we give nitroglycerin, and I think it's been approved for 2 applications, right? For angina and hemorrhoid by FDA. But I'm using the nitroglycerin as well in managing diabetic neuropathy and pain. So you can use a small amount of nitroglycerin. But the problem with giving nitroglycerin by itself, it does have this double side too. The reason because nitric oxide in long term, it can be oxidized and become peroxynitrate, and peroxynitrate has damaging effect. So patients who are using nitroglycerin for their angina, it's good for short term, but with long term they develop tolerance. And also in the long term, those nitroglycerin, those nitric oxide that's produced from nitroglycerin, they react with the free radicals and become peroxynitrate and can cause damaging to the heart and even worsen the condition in the long term of use of nitric oxide in general. So I do recommend when you're giving nitroglycerin or nitric oxide in general, give antioxidants. Polyphenols and thiols are the top, but of course other antioxidants is good to add. So that will help to neutralize the free radicals, and that will lead to the nitric oxide to do the good things and not doing and flipping into becoming peroxynitrate and damaging the heart. And so it has been known since the discovery of the biological rule of nitric oxide in 1980 that supplying nitric oxide donors such can have many beneficial effects in different conditions by stimulating stem cells and modulating the immune response. However, there are also existing substantial risk of side effects with long-term use. Excess of nitric oxide can help the mitochondrial metabolism by binding to cytochrome oxidase, and can also produce reactive nitrogen species, peroxynitrate, by interacting with reactive oxygen species. To avoid these potential damaging side effects, we propose to combine the use of nitric oxide with 4 additional components. Some of these are antioxidants. Initially, we believe that addition of antioxidants such as thiols and polyphenols and vitamins can neutralize reactive oxygen species, reactive nitrogen species. And secondly, we believe that the application of appropriate wavelengths and dosage of light, blue and red, and near-infrared, depending on the exact condition being treated, we will be dissociating the nitric oxide from the cytochrome oxidase and other storage sites, and this is stored in the mitochondrial ATP production, stimulating healing in many situations. Thirdly, we think detoxification will remove the pathological free radicals generated and increase the nitric oxide bioavailability. Lastly, by delivering electrons to the body through electrotherapy, we might help to saturate the free radicals with electrons, thus eliminating underlying oxidative stress, stabilizing mitochondria, preventing further formation of pathological free radicals, and increasing the nitric oxide bioavailability. These combination therapy may be applied to treat and prevent large variety of oxidative stress-related disease, such as degenerative disease, immunological disease, chronic infectious disease, cancer, and broad range of unmet medical needs involving chronic inflammation with emphasize on pain management. We done with time? All right. So we just have to go through this slide, just showing the mechanism of action of light therapy, right? Which helps to dissociate the nitric oxide, and also it helps to buffer the redox. But in healthy tissue, it's actually it actually increases the free radicals, which is the physiological one. And when you increase the physiological free radicals, you can stimulate the antioxidant genes, you can stimulate the anti-apoptotic genes, and also stimulate the anti-inflammatory genes. That's the good rose, right? That's the spark of increase of the free radical. Versus pathological free radicals, which is the bad one, bad rose, right? They are constantly high, and when they're constantly high, they stimulate the opposite. They stimulate the pro-oxidant enzyme, they stimulate the pro-inflammatory cytokines, and also they stimulate the apoptotic genes. I just want to show you the infrared red under hypoxia and nitric oxide oxidative stress. What happened here, they actually, the same thing, they shed nitric oxide from the cytochrome oxidase, yes, but they actually buffer the redox. They don't increase the free radicals here, they decrease the free radicals. Okay, and blue light helps to dissociate nitric oxide from the hemoglobin, and that will also help to buffer the redox as well. And so reactive oxygen species levels are reduced, nitric oxide bioavailability will increase, and redox status is shifted to reduction state. Microcontin therapy also helps to neutralize the free radicals, all right, and it does help to increase the ATP as well, and shift the redox into reduction. Okay, I think that's enough. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you very much for this fast ride through this topic. I think you missed out my most beloved substance, the coenzyme Q10, because it's not only a free radicals K-vator, it stabilizes the membranes of the cell, of the mitochondria, it stabilizes the calcium influx. So I think, as Flynn Beard presented a couple of days ago from Boston, it's a terrific substance to combine in Parkinson's disease.
Right. I think, as I mentioned when I say antioxidant, I mentioned the thiols and the polyphenols, but we are not missing the other nitroredox modulators, as you said, the Q10 and other selenium, all minerals and magnesium oxide, all of those can help, especially the Q10. That's why patients receiving statin, right? The statin does inhibit the synthesis of the Q10, and that's why statin causes mitochondrial dysfunction, and that's why we're giving it with statin. And yes, that's the reason Big Pharma, when they produce their products, they don't look at the side effects, they don't look at alteration of the nitroredox balance. So most of the drugs that's produced by Big Pharma does affect the side effects, does alter the nitroredox, which cause the side effects that we are seeing.
I think coenzyme Q10 really has an exceptional role because it's not only a free radicals K-vanger and reduces oxidative and nitrosative stress, it's part of the respiratory chain, it enhances the production of ATP, and it has an influence in stabilizing the membrane. So I think it's more than most of the other free radicals K-vangers.
Right, and adding it, I definitely considered adding it, and stabilizing anything that inhibits the electron transport chain, including deficiency of the Q10. It does cause mitochondrial dysfunction and release of the free radicals. Those mitochondria, they start leaking the free radicals, and stabilizing the membrane, as you said, it's very important. Along with phototherapy, that will be in the top lines, I think, in mitochondrial dysfunction. Any other questions? Yes.
Just a brief question. Thanks. That was an incredible insight into how that will operate. For other neurodegenerative diseases, even some of the Alzheimer's, is it a similar pathway and similar mechanism? Is it just a predation?
Almost the same. We are restoring the nitroredox balance, and the mechanism of all those diseases, they share the common thing, which is increasing the free radicals. And yes, Parkinson and Alzheimer, they're sharing a lot of things, including deposit of proteins. In Parkinson, is synuclein, Lewy bodies, and in Alzheimer's, amyloid. But we use polyphenol curcumin, very important, because curcumin does tag the amyloid and tag the synuclein and detoxify it, which is the only supplement or drug out there can really help in eliminating that waste. Other polyphenols, they inhibit the synuclein aggregations, but the only polyphenol that really tag the protofibril synuclein is curcumin.
Okay.
Yes.
Last question. Otherwise it takes too long time. Yep.
Did you also use deep brain stimulation?
What is that?
Deep brain stimulation.
Deep brain and all those surgical invasive procedure, I think we can delay them, or maybe we don't need them if we do the conservative in the right way. If we restore the nitroredox balance, and most of the time the Parkinson's disease starts at 65 of the age. If we do this, we don't need the deep brain stimulations and all those surgical tomies that we're doing in the basic ganglion. But that will be the last resort, and I don't think we need them if we're really able to restore the nitroredox balance. And the other thing is that, we know for the fact that degenerations, after 70 to 50% of degenerations that needs to happen in order for Parkinson's disease manifest. So if I have patients with family history of Parkinson's disease, and also we confirm it by using genetic testing, why we don't start them with polyphenols from the early age? And that would help to slow the aggregations and the degeneration of the nerve, and possibly extend the starting of Parkinson's disease to the 90s and maybe 100. You don't know. So I think that needs some clinical studies of starting polyphenols early in age, especially for patients with family history or people with family history of Parkinson's disease. Any other questions?
We should continue.
Right.
Anyway, you're here the whole day. If there's special questions, we do the coffee break. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the excellent lecture. And